Look at this massive transit corridor. Every day, roughly 20% of the world's total oil trade squeezes through the Strait of Hormuz, a maritime choke point that is just 21 miles wide at its narrowest section. The nation controlling the northern coast of this vital artery is Iran. Beneath its soil lies the second largest natural gas reserve on the planet, along with the fourth largest reserve of crude oil. Yet despite sitting on overwhelming geological wealth, the Iranian state operates under severe international isolation. Its economy is heavily sanctioned, and its currency suffers from profound, ongoing depreciation. To understand why Tehran pursues an aggressive and often erratic geopolitical posture, reading the daily headlines is insufficient. We have to build a structural model of the state from the ground up. That requires tracing a distinct path, beginning with the bedrock physical geography of the region, layering on its unique hybrid system of governance, and finally mapping out its modern grand strategy. What emerges is a portrait of a civilizational state. Iran's permanent physical features act as the inescapable forces dictating its modern diplomatic and economic reality. This 3D topographic map shows the physical borders of modern Iran. The country is essentially a massive, elevated plateau, completely surrounded by formidable natural barriers. On the western flank, the immense Zagros Mountains form a literal wall against the Arab lowlands. To the north, the Alborz Mountains seal off the plateau from the Caspian Sea. Inside those walls sits a deep, inhospitable interior. The Dasht-e-Kavir and Dasht-e-Lut deserts dominate the center of the country, registering as some of the hottest and driest places on Earth. This rugged, fortress-like topography made logistics nearly impossible for foreign armies. Historically, it prevented total colonization by the expanding British and Russian empires. Because the core territory was never fully occupied, the population preserved a distinct Persian linguistic and cultural identity. The mountains physically insulated them from the largely Arabized nations directly to their west. Look at the sheer scale of this infrastructure. Iran's massive hydrocarbon reserves are concentrated near its borders, requiring industrial complexes like this one to extract and transport oil toward its coastlines on the Persian Gulf and Caspian Sea. The geography provides a permanent dual connectivity to both West and Central Asia, while simultaneously keeping the central cultural core highly defensible and difficult for foreign powers to control. The modern Iranian state is shaped by a deep historical trauma. In 1953, the democratically elected Prime Minister, Mohammad Mossadegh, attempted to nationalize the country's oil industry. In response, the CIA and British intelligence orchestrated Operation Ajax, a coup that overthrew Mossadegh. This explicit foreign interference planted the seeds of a deep, systemic anti-Western ideology. That resentment culminated in a violent rejection of Western influence. The 1979 Islamic Revolution overthrew the Western-backed monarchy entirely, replacing it with a completely new political order, led by Ayatollah Khomeini. Almost immediately, the new state faced an 8-year, brutal conflict, the Iran-Iraq War. The sheer scale of casualties forced the rapid militarization of society and forged a doctrine of extreme, uncompromising national survival. These specific historical traumas produced a unique constitutional doctrine known as Velayat-e-Faqih, or the guardianship of the Islamic jurist. It acts as the blueprint for the current government. As this institutional diagram shows, the system features a republican layer at its base. The public directly elects the president and the members of the parliament, known as the Majlis, to handle day-to-day administration. However, sitting directly above them is an absolute theocratic layer. The supreme leader holds ultimate, unchecked authority over the military, foreign policy, and the state as a whole. This control is enforced by the Guardian Council. This unelected body holds absolute vetting power, allowing it to disqualify political candidates before an election and block legislation passed by the parliament. This heavily restricted system causes severe internal friction. Iran possesses a highly educated, modern population, and their demands for civil liberties repeatedly clash with the rigid control of the centralized theocracy. The hybrid structure successfully guarantees ideological purity and prevents the foreign infiltration the regime fears, but it does so by creating a permanent democratic deficit that actively stifles internal evolution. The external consequences of this uncompromising anti-Western posture, combined with an active nuclear enrichment program, is a crippling regime of international sanctions. These sanctions effectively isolate Iran's oil-dominated economy from global financial networks. The result is persistently high inflation, massive currency depreciation, and climbing youth unemployment. Unable to fund a conventional, modernized military economy under these conditions, Tehran relies on asymmetric proxy warfare. As mapped here, they project power by funding and arming aligned militias in Lebanon, Yemen, Syria, and Iraq. To survive total economic isolation, the state has officially abandoned the idea of integration with Western markets and executed a strategic pivot toward the East. Recently, Iran secured full membership in the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, or SCO, and gained inclusion in the expanding BRICS economic bloc. The ultimate anchor of this survival strategy is Beijing. Tehran recently signed a comprehensive 25-year strategic and economic agreement with China, securing a guaranteed buyer for its crude oil in exchange for infrastructure investment. Iran actively traded Western economic integration for regional proxy dominance. That choice forces the state into a permanent reliance on the emerging Eastern Bloc for its economic survival. Now, shift perspective. Consider how a rising power like India attempts to navigate a relationship with this heavily sanctioned, isolated state. India faces a fundamental geographic disadvantage. It desperately requires overland access to trade markets in Central Asia and Europe, but its physical path is completely blocked by a hostile Pakistan. India's strategic workaround centers here, the Chabahar port, located on Iran's southeastern coast. New Delhi has invested heavily to develop this maritime facility. This map illustrates why. Chabahar acts as the critical southern anchor for the International North-South Transport Corridor, or INSTC. Cargo moves by sea from Mumbai to Iran, then overland up into Russia, bypassing Pakistan entirely. Executing this multi-billion-dollar logistics route forces India to walk a severe diplomatic tightrope. The strategy faces two constant threats: the persistent pressure of United States secondary sanctions targeting anyone doing business with Tehran, and the risk that Iran's growing alignment with China will absorb the port into Beijing's rival Belt and Road network. For New Delhi, Iran is not a natural ideological partner. It is simply an unavoidable, high-risk geographic bypass that is absolutely essential to India's broader grand strategy. When we assemble the complete model, the structural reality is clear. Iran draws immense power from its impenetrable geography and vast energy reserves, while its deepest vulnerabilities stem from an unyielding political structure. Internally, the regime faces the constant threat of economic collapse. Stagnation continues to drive ongoing social unrest against the centralized theocracy. Externally, there is the ever-present danger of direct military escalation. Tensions regarding its sprawling proxy networks and its advanced nuclear program constantly risk drawing in Israel or the United States. Moving forward, the stability of West Asia hinges on a single pivot point: whether Iran eventually seeks diplomatic normalization, such as reviving a nuclear agreement, or doubles down on total Eastern isolation. Regardless of the path it takes, the physical reality remains unchanged. The state controls the northern coastline of the world's most critical energy artery. Despite decades of severe sanctions, internal civic turmoil, and exhaustive proxy wars, Iran's foundational geography guarantees it will remain an unavoidable anchor in the new multipolar world order.